This is the Jim Nog Pod with your host, Jim Noguera. On today's show, episode 9, Rebecca YS Perez, spoken word artist, writer. Let's start the show.
This is the Jim Nog Pod with Jim Noguera. It is the Jim Nog Pod with Jim Noguera.
Most interested man
It is the
in the
Jim Nog
world.
Pod with Jim Noguera.
Interested. The most interested man
Jim
in the
Nog
world.
Pod.
Interested.
It is the Jim
Interested.
in the world.
Welcome. Well, today's podcast features my conversation with Rebecca YS Perez. Rebecca self-published a short collection piece of poems and prose entitled I Hope You Fall in Love. We discuss the book, we discuss her writing process, we discuss motivations, inspirations, and the like. I know her personally from work at the Writing Center, and I've known her for about a couple of years now. We tried to have the conversation in person, but that didn't work out. So we opted for Skype, and I think the podcast came out pretty well, if I do say so myself. And now, Rebecca YS Perez. So I have your book right here, and this is a great book. You were kind enough to sign it. Just want to show the people that. And this is a really cool piece. So there are there's a lot of stuff in here. This is kind of like a very like postmodern, experimental, like hodgepodge of stuff. I don't even know how to describe some of the stuff. So there's obviously poetry here, but but there are other things. There are pieces of your journal in here too, right?
Yeah. So in there, I've included pieces where I'm responding to a lot of the quotes that are accompanying the pieces, and they've either inspired the piece that's following it, or the other way around. I found that quote and I thought it fit perfectly with what I was writing. But then there's also the pieces of lines that I came up with along scope of, I think it was a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And I kind of added them in there in places where they mattered, in places where they fit the best.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because they told that whole story along the way. And they were all lines that I thought up during the regular day. I keep a small book with me everywhere. And whenever I come up with one, I just write it down. A lot of them get tossed. And so a lot of these, I decided I would put them in the book and have their own page.
Yeah, they have their own page on this by themselves. And that's really cool. One of the ones I really like, it's dated 26 December 2016. I don't know if I should read it or you should read it. Well, I'll just read it to you because I do want you to read some stuff.
Okay,
But
absolutely.
But the beautiful thing about writing is that I can have second chances. This time I can be better. This time it can be wonderful. This time I can be enough. I totally feel like that's what writing is. It's like It's yeah, that's totally the philosophy that I have when I go into writing. It's like now I can really focus on getting something right, and I don't know, maybe I usually start with childhood, but maybe we'll get to that. What is your writing process like? Do you write like a million drafts, as our boss does, Janet Robertson?
Yes.
Um, do you do you plan out what you're gonna do beforehand? Like, do you write a an outline, or do you kind of like free write your first draft? Let's say, I guess I don't know if, because I don't do that much poetry. I don't know if poetry is that different. I know as a fiction writer, it's a big thing. Like, do you organize? Do you write an outline, or do you free write? You know, but what do you think?
So definitely because I do both, I do see a lot of the difference when it comes to writing longer pieces. It does feel weird to not have something planned for the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially if I have a piece in there that's a couple of pages long, and going in, I knew what I was going to end with. But the pieces that are shorter, the ones that are 2 pages or so and so on, those I started free writing. And a lot of these pieces are not just for the page. A lot of them are pieces that I read out loud, and they're for performances as well. So because of that, they change very often through those performances specifically. Because a word sounds better here, or this phrase sounds weird, so I need to change it. And so that goes on as I'm performing. And every performance, it changes a little bit, and so on and so forth, until I'm happy with it. I'm comfortable reading it, and I'm comfortable with what it's saying. Um, I think it changes a lot as far as starting points, though. Sometimes I have a bunch of different lines and I piece them together. A lot of times I just free write the whole way through. It really depends on the piece. My most powerful ones I found have come up from puzzle pieces.
Like, what do you mean, like puzzle pieces? You mean like you figured out one piece here, one piece there, and you
Yes,
try to figure
exactly.
out how it fits together?
Yes, exactly. So I remember I have this one political poem that I didn't put in the book. And it was my first big piece. It was the one where I was going to go out and I was going to perform it. That was my first performance piece I've ever done. It was my first piece that I was like, now I'm a poet. Now I feel like I can say that. So that one, I had came home from a show and I had saw all these other performers and they had done a bunch of political pieces and I was really inspired and I kept jotting down notes the whole time. And I came home and it was just it felt like completely different pieces, all of them separated. And then just working my way through it and putting in more here and more there, I had, I think, about a 4 minute piece at the end of it. And that was what I always say is one of my best poems. And that's sort of the process that I had a big chunk of paragraph here, one over here, and I kind of went through it and said, okay, this should be number 8, and this should be first, this should be third, this should be fourth, and so on. And I just kept changing it around until it finally made a coherent piece. That was how I find most of my favorite pieces are made in that way. And I can't force it to happen, though. I've tried to do it that way, just starting out that way, and it
Yeah.
never works.
Yeah.
But when it happens organically, those always end up being my favorite pieces.
Yeah, you said an interesting thing. Like, those are your best pieces. How do you determine what are your best pieces? Like, how do you, when a piece really stands out to you, why?
So For me, because I started in a very therapeutic environment for poetry, we used writing and poetry specifically in a group to sort of heal from childhood, heal from neighborhoods, heal from schools, everything that was going around. And that was what we wrote about. So in that environment, poetry had become so much of a therapy thing that one of the categories I always say that my piece has to have, it has to have some kind of healing to it. It has to be some kind of raw emotion in there that I have to let go of. Whether it's anger, whether it's need to say something, whether it's sadness, all of it, something needs to be coming out of it. The second thing is just whether I think it's saying something more than just spilling out on a page. It can't be just for me, because if it was, I didn't have to share it. Those can just be kept. But if it can go to someone else, then that expresses something more. And then because it can be reached out, those feel more like they're for other people than just me. And those are why I think they're better than the other pieces.
Yeah.
It's not just intimate to me anymore.
Wow. Okay. So you feel like in some level it's like intimate for others as well.
Yes, absolutely. There was one point where I had finished the show, and a girl came up to me and she was crying. She was crying, and she hugged me, and she didn't want to say anything. She didn't say her name or anything like that. She just hugged me, said thank you, and walked away. And it was partly one of the reasons why I wanted to do that piece, was because I knew someone else needed to hear it. It wasn't for me anymore. And those are better than just something on a piece of paper anymore. It's something that's going to help people in some way. Someone can feel they are not alone, whether it's they're not angry, they're not sad, they're not happy alone. And that, to feel like that's the main point of poetry for me, is that it expresses and shares in feelings.
That's great. And I think as a writer, yeah, I mean, you are sharing it, right? I mean, you can write poetry and not share it, kind of like Emily Dickinson, and be isolated. And although I think that I did read up a bit on her, and I think she was really hurt by criticism of her poetry, and that was part of the reason she didn't share. But if you're sharing it, whether you're doing spoken word like you're doing, or you're writing it like I am, although obviously you've written it too, but yeah, you are sharing it. You are sharing a part of yourself. It's I don't know. Maybe some people go to see a therapist. Some people, the blank page is their therapist.
Mm-hmm. I've found that a lot of people are the same way I am, because we read a lot. Those are our way of escaping. So even though I didn't escape much to poetry until I started writing it, I feel like it's the same process.
How long does it take you to write a poem? And let me add on to that a little bit. And then how do you decide what to write?
So what to write generally comes with ideas right away. So I can write about 100 different things that I have it's sort of the same bloodline, but you can write about it a million different ways. So I have at least 3 of those that I can do at all times. Generally, that's politics, childhood, and school. And I'm very big in academia because I'm there all the time. I'm working there at the center, and I'm going into teaching, so that's very big to me as well. So with just those 3, you have plenty of things you can go into small subgroups. But I find that the topic just comes in something that I probably got really upset about. Generally, it's something I was either angry about or it's something I was just frustrated. I want somebody to listen to what I had to say, and so I just started writing it. A lot of times it'll be just sort of like one line, and then it stays there, and it stays there, and then finally I come up with more, and then it eventually keep going. So I think the longest time I've spent on a piece, on just the first draft, was probably about 2 or 3 months. And that was the piece to my daughter that's in the book.
Yeah.
The shortest has been I spent 45 minutes on. And that was the political piece where it just ended up piecing everything together. So some of them happen in very spur of the moment, but some of them I take a very long time just to get, including all the touch-ups and things like that. I think most of them do take up to 2 or 3 months to finally get them perfect or finished.
Wow. Okay. That kind of makes me feel a little bad because I take forever to write something, especially poetry. Part of the reason is just like every night I might look at some poems and adjust a couple of things, and then the next day I will probably change it again in a different way, and it never feels. Sometimes it does feel finished, and when it does feel finished, it feels really good. But for me, it kind of drags on, and yeah, I even have a narrative that I'm writing. It's one of my first like long pieces that I've tried to write, and it is well, let's just put it this way: the first like inception and draft, I think, was in 2009. So, and I still am thinking about writing it, but sometimes you can't figure out what the plot is, or it just changes for you because that's not the story you want to tell anymore. And that's kind of what I found is I write a draft and then then it's a different story that I want to tell, and until I find that sort of story that I really need to tell, I just keep working on it.
So with my stories and my so many started novels, I'm not done with any of them. I've started writing at least 7, and I haven't finished any of them. They've been sitting and haunting me on my desktop for about 7 years, and each changing. But that's why I kind of came out with a poetry book first, because I just can't finish any of the novels. But with my poetry, I seem to be more stubborn. I go to other people and I get their feedback and see what they think about it. And so I do get that, and a lot of the times I do make some small edits and things like that. But as far as things on a whole, I'm very stubborn with my poetry in that I don't like changing it. So for me, once the poem is done, I don't change it very much from the first draft. So it's more of a thing that I think it's just too, I wouldn't say too personal. I think it's just too permanent. Once I finish it, I don't think I should change it at all.
That's such an interesting perspective. Like, yeah, it's like you've captured something. It sounds to me like it's almost like you captured something on like a, some sort of, it's almost like a Jackson Pollock. Like you've captured something, and you just want it to be that what you've captured at that moment.
I always feel if they wanted me to change the entire piece, or if they wanted me to change an idea in it, then I'd rather write a new piece for that idea than change the one I've already written.
Yeah. Okay, so I bought your book, and I think it's awesome. Your collection, we haven't said the title yet. It's
No, we have not.
it's called I Hope You Fall in Love. A collection of poetry and prose. Where does the title come from?
So the title came from the introduction, and that was actually one of the last things that I wrote for this book. And it didn't have a title. In fact, I just named it Introduction when I added it. But that piece has felt so important to me in the time that I was writing it, in the time that I was publishing the book. And it was part of everyone around me was feeling heartbroken, or everyone was falling in love, and everyone was going through so many things, and it felt like a time where I wanted everyone to be happy. I always say that I want everyone to be okay in the end. And even more than that, I want everyone to feel love in the end, no matter where that love is coming from. Let there be love. So I always felt like this book specifically wasn't just about feeling love in a relationship. It was about family, my sisters, the family I want to have in the future, feeling love from myself and learning to love myself. Those were all very important themes with all the pieces that I put together. So I felt like the title itself could really embody that. And only after you finish would you realize it's not just about one singular type of love that you feel, that you think of when you first think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, there are many different types of love that you're talking about in here. Before we dive into the book, I really I'm very curious about people's early experiences, their childhood. Maybe it's because I have a weird obsession with wanting to relive mine. But I'm so ready for elementary school this time around. So
Ready for the naps we missed.
So, yeah, any childhood memories that you want to talk about that maybe are responsible, at least partly, for getting into writing?
For getting into writing, I have so many. The main reason is I started writing because I loved reading so much. And I kept saying, I didn't like the ending. I wanted it to change, or they should have done that differently, or there was a better way out, or I could think of a different way to start, all of these other things. So that's the whole reason I started writing. So reading was a very big part of my writing experience. And I remember the first time I went to a library, and my grandmother took me, and she said I was running through the stacks, just back and forth the whole time. And I just kept bringing her more and more books to take. And so we ended up bringing a pile of 7 or 8 books back to her house. And I already had homework that I needed to do. So I crawl into my grandfather's big comfy chair and started doing my homework. And she said after I was done, I can read the books, and we'd have a good night, have dinner, all this and that. So about 45 minutes in, I go up to her, pull on her dress, and I say, Grandma, I want to take a break. She said, okay, sweetie, go ahead, take a break. She turns around, and I'm reading. And she said, I thought you were taking a break. I am, Grandma, I'm reading. And to this day, she will never let anyone forget this story. And so nowadays, it's me writing instead. So everywhere I go, she just complains that all I ever do is write. And I always joke that someone asks me what I like to do growing up. And I was bad at sports and tripping over myself everywhere. I just didn't associate with other kids very much, so that wasn't happening. And so instead, I was either with my nose in a book or with a pencil in my hand. And I think it mostly just kept going because everyone kept telling me it was good. It was good for me to do that. It was good for me to do that. I used to get in trouble a lot because I would sneak the book under my desk or sleeping with the blanket over my head and a flashlight to keep reading.
I've done that, yeah.
Yeah. I think the first time I really started seriously thinking about I wanted to write was I started writing fan fiction when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
I wrote a lot of Harry Potter fan fiction. That's
Yeah,
mostly where it started.
I wrote like, well, I guess I wouldn't call it fan fiction. It was more like rip off. So I would rip off R.L. Stein. Like I just plagiarized that guy. And Clue, like I just plagiarized that. You know what I did? I thought this was pretty smart, actually. Now that I'm looking back, I don't know if there are any books like this, but I loved Clue. I thought that was just really cool, and I read a lot of choose your own adventure stories. So what I did was I combined both, and so
Cool.
I was writing a like choose your own adventure Clue thing. So it's like you choose one way, you could die. You choose another way. You know, you're trying to figure out who the murderer is. That's pretty smart for, however, if I do
Yeah.
say so myself. That's kind of,
Yeah, I would have had fun with it.
yeah.
I think my favorite thing was I used to do fan fiction for a series of unfortunate events. And my favorite part about doing a fan fiction for that one was I would force myself to copy the way he wrote. And that was the first time I really played with style, was I was copying his way of doing it. And that was the first time I paid attention to it even.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good exercise too. I mean, writing the way another writer writes. I mean, it's there's a lot of cognitive processes that I think are going on there. You know, you're trying to be creative in your own right. You're trying to copy what the style that this person has. So there's interpretation, there's analysis, and all sorts of things. Yeah, that's a really good exercise that is just good for writers in general. Just
Yeah.
transcribe a story. Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, I'm glad I asked you about that. That was really cool. So there are a lot of good pieces. There are a lot of great pieces in your book. You know, we'll just probably be able to read a couple or three. Is there one that you really would like to read?
I always say my favorite one to read is the one to my daughter.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you to read about that. Yeah, I have that page, dog-eared, page 30, right? If I should have a daughter.
Yes. So would you like me to read about it?
Yes, I would. I would love to have you. Yes.
So if I should have a daughter. My dearest daughter, they will place you in my arms with the blanket swaddling you, and I will lay your head on my chest like a warm blanket in the dead of winter. You, in the grip of your tiny hands, will save me with the reason to believe God still gives second chances. My daughter, there will be times when you feel like an ant in a giant's land, afraid but far too curious to back down. There will be days where you will find everything bright and colorful until the next, when you will find it scary and hostile. And that is when I will be there for you the most. I will be there for you at 2 a.m. when you cannot sleep from nightmares haunting you, and there at 3 in the afternoon when all you want to do is dance. You will grow up with Disney, superheroes, and the unexpected. Muñeca, you will be whimsical, rebellious, and everything I am not. Be strong-willed, confident, and full of faith. Perhaps in only a few things you will be like your mother. unforgiving clumsiness, overly emotional, full of imagination and biting wit. And just when I think you would have inherited nothing from your father, I will witness you walk with your head held high, command a room, and charm everyone you meet. Those will be the moments when I will smile and say, there he is. My daughter, you will have malt chocolate eyes and a smile that will make hearts race. Your beauty will be in shades of melanin and light. On the backs of your hands, I will write every way in which you are beautiful, so that you may never forget. Please never forgive me if I do not tell you enough. I want you to know that your first kiss will be awkward, with teeth you don't quite know what to do with. And your first time will be even more embarrassing, full of clumsy motions and hesitations. Your first love will be like the sun. Your last will happen without notice. Remember, broken hearts cannot be patched with band-aids, filled with empty promises, or mended with needle and thread. Know that only love and time will heal you, and sometimes you have to make both of them on your own. This world will try to break you. Do not let it. You are young and a woman, and so many will try to make these the reasons to not give you what you deserve. As my daughter, I expect you to demand it, work for it, and take it all by force. Make everything you deserve on your own. There is nothing people fear more these days than a strong woman. My darling, I cannot teach you everything, nor will I ever feel as though I have prepared you enough for this world. Please know that I will fail frequently, and I do not have all the answers. Just remember, your mother is a writer, and your father, he's a fighter. And you are the baby girl with big eyes and a small frame who will plant her feet and live without apologizing.
Yeah, that's a very powerful piece. I mean, I kind of had to pause there because of how powerful it is. Um, so there's just so much emotion and so many different things going on in this poem that kind of don't really know how to start. What do you want to say about this piece?
Well, the idea for this piece came in the group that I was in high school, the writing group. And the very first day, the mentor had came in. He said, by the end of this group, by the time you leave here, no matter how much time you've spent here, whatever it is, there are 2 poems that I want you to be able to write. One of them was called The Museum of My Mind, and it was supposed to be able to take a walk through and narrate what your museum would look like and what things of your life would be on display. But the second one was a poem to your child, to the future children that you would have, whether boy, girl, whether you gave birth to them or not, whatever it was. And that stuck with me. And for a very long time, I wasn't able to write that piece. I think I spent 3 years after the program, 3 years after high school, and I had finally just started writing the piece. And I had sat there for a really long time, and I had only come up with one of the last paragraph, my darling cannot teach you everything. And that one made it easier, at least, to write the rest of it, because I had already given myself the willingness to accept the fact that this is not going to be a perfect piece. It wasn't even going to be a perfect explanation of everything I wanted to say. It wasn't going to have everything I wanted to say, and it wasn't supposed to. I had learned that I didn't have to cram all these things. I wasn't a mother yet, for one, or now. And it wasn't just for me. A lot of times we forget that when we do write these letters or poems to these future children that we have, there is always a background question. And it's the one that's always gnawing at us. What would you have wanted someone to say to you when you were a kid? And so I tried to put as much of that in there as well. And that was the hardest part about writing it, was because would I have really wanted to know? Would I have listened? If I wasn't going to listen, would there be a reason to say it anyways? So I went through months of taking things out and a lot of going around and asking the mothers I knew about what they wanted to hear. And I remember when I finally finished the piece, I didn't know I was done yet until I went to one of the professors on the campus, and I asked her what she thought about it. And she said I need to read that to my daughter.
Wow.
And that was when I was like, okay, so I'm done. I can. It's ready for the book. And that was the only time where I was like, okay, it's ready for the book. And once it was there, I wasn't sure if it'd be ready for my future daughter, though. So I've still kind of kept the raw paper with all the pen scratching and everything on it. And so eventually I'll put it in an envelope and put it away and give it to my child when if I have them in the future. And I think for me it's been tough because I look at where we come from, where we grew up, and it doesn't address a lot of it, but it addresses enough where you can fill in those holes yourself. And I think that's what speaks to a lot of parents, is that they can fill in the holes, and it doesn't have to just be one person's child or one person's daughter. It can be all of our daughters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. Yeah. Okay. We're good.
Okay.
There are so many things that we could potentially talk about. You write about God still gives second chances, and that seems to be like a theme throughout this book, or certainly one of the themes. And I think that's interesting. Is that one of your main motivations, like the idea that and I think this is probably a universal thing. I don't know. I think I'm asking a question that's probably like the answer is yes for like essentially everyone, which is, would you, do you feel like you would like to go into the past and just like rewrite everything? I mean, I know that there are people who are like,
I wouldn't want to change
no
anything.
regrets. I wouldn't change anything, but I never really buy that. But it sounds great to say. Is that one of your main motivations?
So I have a very particularly hard time with my spirituality. I was raised Catholic. I went to a lot of Catholic schools and everything, and so we believe in the whole, you go to heaven if you are a good person, and once you die, that's where you go. And but I always had this really strong desire to and want to believe in reincarnation. And it's always been about that second chance, but it's never been about wanting to relive the one I'm in now. I'd rather have a completely new chance. Let it be somewhere else, some other time, some other person even, is fine with me. So maybe not change anything that I have with where my life has ended up now. There are plenty of things I'd like to change, but I'm more than happy with where I've ended up and how comfortable I am with myself now. and I'd rather not have to relive anything like that. So getting a chance to be a whole new person, yes, that I'd probably like. That's probably why I do like the idea of reincarnation, and I've been told that's where it stems from.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with the idea of being able to like relive things and rewrite the past. I think that probably people who are into like time travel, science fiction, that's part of the motivation. So it's interesting to hear what you say. It's like, yes, I definitely would like to do things over, but you know, I'm not reliving this stuff, and I'd like to start afresh. So another piece that really stands out to me is, well, I dog-eared several of these. How about let's talk about on anxiety, because that's another theme I think that runs through here. And then so how about if you don't mind reading that one and then talking about that.
So, on anxiety. Let me tell you about panic attacks. They start by feeling so very much like a heart attack. You will think you are dying, but the end just won't come fast enough. When you live with an anxiety disorder, some days are a lot harder than others. My anxiety takes different forms. Sometimes it is manic, it is moving, it is not being able to get the words out fast enough. It is wanting to crawl out of my skin sometimes. Sometimes it is not being able to crawl out of bed in the morning. When I meet people, I will give them a warning. I am a war, and I have become a battlefield that never sees peace. Take me as I am. You are the first thing to ever fully be capable of calming me. I am still unsure if I like that. I've had enough people ripped from my smile who have been tattooed as birds on my back as reminders people are not home. I refuse to be homeless. I am my own house, and I shake enough to keep me standing and knowing that I am alive. I am decorated with wounds and worry. I try to be quiet, I try to be brave, but I cannot escape my suffering, and I gave no one the key. Despite all the warnings and the locked doors, I still don't know how I have come to find you here. I wonder sometimes if you can feel me crumble beneath your fingertips. I wonder if you are ever burned by the raging flames I am made of. I want to be okay. But sometimes I think perhaps in the beginning, when we were all made of stardust, I just never stopped exploding. You want to be there for me, but an anxiety attack is a solitary activity. I've spent years clawing at this body. I've stayed awake all night fighting demons, trying to figure out a way to tell you. There are parts of me hidden in closets. The skeletons whisper to me there, telling me the world will end over and over again, yet every day I wake up and live in agonizing anticipation. I seek more than a shoulder to cry on. I seek more than a kind world. It is not the world that hurts me. It is myself. You watch me, waiting in horror for me to collapse. But darling, I need you to know, you loving me will not heal me. Please realize I already know that. And I do not expect it to.
Wow. I relate so much to this poem. There's.
So I don't know if you want to show them either. It's definitely not written in standard.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll just put that towards the camera. Yeah, you can see it's like it's the letters are kind of all over the place.
Where are they? Yeah, it's definitely on this side. They go pretty much everywhere on the page I can get them.
Right. Which echoes, of course, the the emotion, the sentiment, and the voice. Wow. First off, I identify very much with it because I feel anxious a lot of the time, and I think a lot of people do, I think it's normal to some extent. I mean, we're not evolved for life in the 21st century, and some of it is a bit much. And what I really like, though, is your description of. First off, it captures an existential dread that I've incorporated in my fiction and poetry. So I definitely identify there. But the idea of suffering alone and no one else being able to help you, no matter how much they love you, no matter how close they are to you, I think that's really powerful. I don't know. Do you want to share more about that?
So you're definitely right in that it's definitely a reoccurring theme throughout the book. Obviously, I have another one in there that's for my sister and talking to her about anxiety. And just as much as I've struggled with my anxiety for a very long time before I even understood what it was, I've watched my father deal with it. And some ways I fear that I kind of watched him and then mimicked, but too often it's just come about. And I've went through years of not understanding why I'm getting this absolute panic running through my chest. And it happened in moments where there isn't a reason. And it's kind of the thing that I just have to calm myself down. And it's not something everyone understood. And for a long time, no one understood what it was. People just kind of just like, you have problems, go see somebody, and that was it. No one understood what this was. And so as people are becoming more aware of it, as more people get it, it's becoming something that definitely our generation, I feel, has been connected to more than ever. Just because it's something that has come along with living in this century, living with all of this technology and all of the crises that we live in this time. I think the main thing that came about with my anxiety, even as I slowly began to be able to soothe myself and be able to control it to at least some extent, was the struggle of watching everyone else around me have it as well. And it wasn't just something me and my dad had, my sister has it, my best friends have it. And we all kind of had different things that made us panic, or it happened all of a sudden, whatever it was. And we want to be there for them. We want to so much, especially when we know how it feels. We're trying and we want to know how to help. Most of the time, it's not. You can't help. Most of the time, the best thing to do is to give them a moment. And for me, whenever I was feeling anxious, it always tended to be a different experience. And a lot of times it became moments where I didn't know why. So I would get frustrated and start writing and try to see if I started writing, maybe I would find the reason as to why I'm upset. Never happened, but I would keep trying. And the more frustrated and the more I tried to find an answer, it wasn't coming up. And that's sort of how this piece came up, was one of those puzzle piece poems where I just put together all the ones that I wrote in that frustration of trying to understand this problem that I was dealing with for so long.
Yeah, and it's such a difficult sort of thing to navigate through because, like you say, it kind of sometimes it comes up and you're not sure why, and it's like a constant thing, you know. I don't know if anybody really gets rid of something like that. All right, so really quickly, one more piece. I'm not sure which one to choose for the last one. Would you? How about if I give you a choice and you choose which one you want to read? I really like my new favorite F word. I really like that one, and I think this is your last piece. No, yeah, it's your last. This looks like a short prose piece, an open letter to the last person I will ever love. Which one would you prefer?
So I definitely would love to read the open letter because that is my favorite piece of the book.
Okay. Yeah.
So, an open letter to the last person I will ever love. To the last person I will ever love. If you are reading this and you think for just a moment this could, should, might, maybe, or possibly be about you, please keep reading. I have been in love 3 times in my life, and it has taught me one thing, if nothing else. A chance coincidence can change everything. So if I am homeward bound and you are reading this, know I will always be here waiting for you to join me. You will know what to do from there. You see, I have been looking for you for a very long time, and I have come to the conclusion that you are either out somewhere riding a turtle's back, lost and confused, or you are playing cruel games of hide and seek with my consciousness, and I just don't know where you are yet. I wonder often if we have met already. Are you in the eyes of someone I know well, or the coy smile of a stranger on the subway? Have I sat beside you hundreds of times and never noticed? I imagine you sitting there reading your novel curled into a question mark, trying to give the answers to soften people in a hardening world. I imagine you will feel like home, and it will not be love at first sight, but a deep, satisfying familiarity. Like when I know I will just think, so it's you. I imagine that you will make this woman feel beautiful for the first part and the largest part of a long while. I imagine you standing there, not having to forgive me for my vices, but helping me to overcome them. With you, I will no longer have to feel like I need to start every sentence with the word sorry. Somehow you will arrive despite my obstacle course of anxiety, taking great care of my whimsical heart in your hands, because in the end, I know only you will never break it. Please know my promises are laugh lines, happily permanent. I promise I will never give up on you. Everything I have ever let go has claw marks on it, so never assume you are easy to surrender to the wind. Fear not, for we will no longer have to play coasters for half-empty hearts, because I will give you my all. My darling, I have been told you only know someone in the age you have met them, but even so, I want to know you. I want to know who you were before the world told you who to be. I want to know what you would do if you were not afraid. How many times did you draft the list of your imperfections? How many times did you forgive them? I will learn every way to make your smile easier. I will know the little tricks you do. What you do when you are overthinking, when you're concentrating, when you're upset. I hope I can know every broken piece of you, and I will adore all of them in ways in which you are broken, for each way gives me more of you to love. I will never ask of you the impossible. I will just ask you to love me in the best way that you can. You are a flower, beautiful simply for existing. I hope I never dream of you, so I never fill you up to be someone you are not, because you are wonderful as you are. You are made up of flawed splendor I can taste on my tongue. The fingerprints of you will be embedded on me forever to show you are here. There will be an embrace that puts the pieces of us back together, and when we look at each other again, we will know. I'm sure even now I will cry. Partly because I'm sappy and hopeless, but mostly I think the world would finally return to the colors of childhood. My knees would buckle, and your heart would stutter, stammer, and I would recite poetry to its beat with my lips across yours. You are enough. You are worth it. Worth every ballad, worth every word, every action. We will be in love where we understand why they call it falling. Because you never really do it on purpose. It's always just happens, and you can feel it in your stomach and chest and every atom of your body. In fact, I'm sure Our very atoms would have been together back when the universe was created, and we have been searching to reunite them ever since. If you can remember back then, way back when we were still stardust, maybe then you would understand how much I love you. And I will show you all the ways in which you are easy to love. We will argue, we will fight, we will have our differences and opinions, and we will make mistakes. But my darling, you will never be difficult to love. I will always want you next to me at the end of the day. You may not be everything I was looking for, but you will be everything I waited for. I will love you in the exact way I have always wanted to be loved.
I will say wow again. I repeat that too much, but that deserves a wow. Yeah, you have a way of writing that it just captures, I think, what so many people feel, and I don't know, you have an uncanny ability at that. I have this weird theory about this, and just tell me what you think. And we should probably, end soon. But I'll just keep it brief. Is it possible, whether you did this intentionally or not, is it possible that in some sense it's this letter, and I'm not just talking about you, but all of us that are searching for this someone and want to feel the feelings that you talk about, is it possible that we are writing, in a sense, a love letter to ourselves? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we are. It's almost as if you are writing to you, waiting for love. You see what I mean?
So I was definitely writing with the thought of someone ahead at the beginning of the piece. But come the part where I started writing, you are worth it. You're worth every ballad, every song, and so on. That was when I was talking to myself, I feel. Because starting there, I was trying to remind myself that I am worth it. I don't have to, it's worth waiting. Because I'm worth those things. No matter the struggles that I dealt with whether I thought I was beforehand or not. So for me, up to that point, it was to someone else. But from there on, that's where it really felt where I was writing to myself. And it wasn't pointed out to me until I had gotten a critique by Amy Herman, and she had told me immediately. She was like, "That was to you, right?" And she felt like I already knew. So she was like, "That was to you. It was such a beautiful letter." Wait, I don't understand. So I had to get clarification. But after reading it with that full thought in mind for the whole piece, and it felt like it was, all of these things are pieces of me. And sure, we like to find pieces of ourselves in other people. But in the piece, I kept finding these pieces of myself in where I was finally allowing myself to love myself. And that was one of the first for me. Because we always have these struggles with ourselves, especially when we have anxiety, especially when we have difficulties and troubles, when we finally have those moments where we realize that we are worth these things and we are worth loving ourselves. It's a great feeling.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you very much. And do you want to share your social media handles for people?
Sure. So on Instagram, which is where I'm mostly on these days, is at writer.RebeccaYSPerez. And on there you can find all of the books I read and quotes from pieces that I just don't have up yet or anything like that. But I also post on my blog, and I have my own library on display on my website, which is RebeccaYSPerez.com.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot. Do you want to end with some sort of message to the people?
Um, I think I want to end with the last quote that I have in the book,
Yes, please
because
do.
that one definitely is the one I always feels best. And fittingly, it was on the last day of 2015.
Okay.
He asked me once what I wanted when I died, what I wanted out of life. And I told him I just wanted more happy memories than sad ones.
There you go.
And so I hope you have happy memories.
Wow. Those are some poems, huh? I had a lot of fun, and we're gonna probably try to do this again sometime, maybe in person. I'm hoping to have Dom Gaffney back sometime soon. Also, Seco 1844, along with a friend and musician, will be joining me, hopefully, toward the end of the year. I have many other things planned, other guests, but they remained unconfirmed at the moment. Music for Gymnog Pod by Marcos and La Guagua, marcosanlaguagua.com. Guagua is spelled Guagua. Art by Seco1844 at Seco1844 on Instagram. Seco is SEKO. My website, which contains news and updates, bios, social media links, contact info, a bibliography, a blog, and a podcast page, is jamesnoguera.com. Noguera is Noguera. Please show your support by subscribing and interacting with the pod on iTunes or whatever your favorite podcatcher happens to be, and on YouTube. You can donate on patreon.com/gymnog or directly via paypal.me/gymnog. And thank you for your interest.